If you'd told me that a single text could burn down 12 years of marriage, I might have laughed. But that was before it happened, before the moment I glanced at my phone between helping customers at my boutique and watched my life split cleanly in two. The message appeared without ceremony. "I'm leaving you, Elena. Moving to Miami with Tessa. I've already emptied our joint account." The words were so absurd, I almost thought it was spam. My hands didn't tremble, my pulse didn't spike. I just kept folding a silk scarf for Mrs. Donnelly, the kind of loyal customer who'd been with me since the beginning. I smiled. I wrapped her purchase in our signature cream paper, tied it with gold ribbon, all while my marriage smoldered quietly in my pocket. Only when she left did I allow myself a small breath. Not a sob, not even a sigh. Just a steady inhale, the kind that tastes like resolve. I'm glad you're here. Give this story a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far truth can travel, because the one I'm about to tell you tore through my family like a wildfire that refused to die. 12 years of Daniel's charm, control, and subtle cruelty had trained me well. I knew how to hide shock behind grace. When I finally opened the message again, I noticed the smug rhythm of it, the gleeful little ha-ha. That was the man I'd married. Not a partner, but a performer, forever chasing applause from whoever was watching. And now his audience was a 2-3-year-old receptionist named Tessa. I typed my response with the same care I used to select fabric for a couture gown. Good luck. Then I locked my phone and turned the sign on my boutique door from open to closed. Outside, Brighton Falls shimmered under the late afternoon Sunday. The sea breeze drifted through the street, tugging at the awnings, carrying the smell of coffee and salt. It was the kind of perfect day Daniel always said he wanted more time to enjoy, as if his misery had been a product of my success. I'd built this boutique from nothing. Moore and Grace was my name, my dream, my life's work. He used to call it your little shop, his tone dripping with condescension. And now that same man thought he'd outsmarted me. I smiled, soft and dangerous. He'd just played his final move. It was my turn. The signs had been there for months, of course. The late nights that didn't match his pay stubs. The new clothes, the gym membership, the cologne that didn't smell like him anymore. His sudden need for privacy, new phone password, separate emails, an unfamiliar energy that filled our house like static. But I'd learned long ago not to confront a liar, you collect them, like evidence. 3 months ago, I found a receipt from La Belle Vie, a high-end restaurant in the city, dated the same night he claimed to be working late. I didn't rage. I didn't even cry. I opened a new bank account instead, quietly, efficiently, moved my savings, updated the passwords he didn't know I remembered, and while he laughed in our living room about simplifying finances, I smiled and agreed to merge accounts, leaving just enough to keep him comfortable, never suspicious. Let him think he was clever. In the end, his arrogance would do all the heavy lifting for me. By the time twilight fell, I'd already called my lawyer, Carmen Lee, sharp as glass and twice as clear. We'd met for coffee 2 months ago when the first hotel charges appeared on our card. I told her everything. When she answered that night, I didn't even bother explaining. "It's time," I said simply. "He made his move?" she asked. "Yes." "Then we file tomorrow. The papers are ready." She paused, voice cooling like steel. "Would you like him served in Miami?" I thought of him packing his bags, grinning at the mirror, imagining freedom. "No rush," I said. "Let him think he's won first." Another text came just as I hung up. "Don't bother begging. Tessa and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later." I read it twice. Then again. He thought he'd humiliated me. But he'd just given me evidence, clear, time-stamped, arrogant evidence. Daniel always underestimated how well I listened when he underestimated me. When he mocked me about not being young anymore, I took screenshots. When he gloated about starting over, I added them to the file. By the time I poured myself a glass of wine that evening, my folder of proof was thick enough to make any judge frown. I raised the glass to the window, to my reflection calm, still, and strangely powerful. "To endings," I whispered, "and better beginnings." The next morning brought another ping. "By the way, use the joint card for flights and hotel. Think of it as my parting gift. LOL. Perfect. I called the credit card company before breakfast. "Yes, this is Elena Moore. I need to report fraudulent charges. Can you confirm the transactions?" the representative asked. 2 first-class tickets to Miami. one hotel reservation at the Royal Palms. Both unauthorized. Do you have any documentation of the fraud? I do, I said smoothly. Text messages from my husband admitting he made those purchases after draining our joint account. A pause, then the faintest hint of sympathy behind the professional tone. I'll cancel the card immediately, ma'am. Somewhere, Daniel was zipping up a suitcase, humming, thinking he'd finally escaped the burden of a woman who refused to worship him. He'd find out soon enough that you can't build freedom on stolen ground. I finished my tea, straightened my posture, and looked around the boutique, my sanctuary, my empire. Every mirror reflected the same truth back at me. I wasn't broken, I was just beginning. He thought that text was the ending. He had no idea it was the prologue to his undoing. When the sun rose the next morning, it painted Brighton Falls in a kind of deceptive, calm gold light, glinting off shop windows, gulls circling lazily above the pier. Inside my boutique, I brewed coffee the way I always did, though this time I didn't drink it. I just watched the steam curl up and vanish, like the last traces of my patience. My phone buzzed again. I know this must be hard for you, Daniel wrote. You're not getting any younger, after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy. My little shop. The boutique that paid our bills when his career pivot went nowhere. The shop that had grown from a thrift rack and a dream into one of Brighton Falls' most profitable small businesses. The space I'd built from scratch while he mocked it as my hobby. My lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I opened my laptop, logged into my private account, the one he didn't know existed, and watched the numbers flicker to life. My accounts were safe. My business, safe. My house, safe. He had no idea that the home he thought of as ours was never his to claim. My grandmother had left it to me alone, and I'd never added his name to the deed, no matter how many times he'd tried to persuade me. He'd called that paranoia. I called it foresight. Around noon, I drove home to gather paperwork for Carmen. The house felt colder than usual, like it already knew he was gone. The only trace of Daniel was the faint scent of his cologne on the couch pillows, something that used to comfort me and now made my stomach turn. On the dining table sat our wedding album, still open from the last time I'd tried to convince myself that we'd been happy. I flipped through it slowly. There he was, younger, leaner, eyes full of the kind of ambition that once looked like love. I studied his face and realized how much effort it had taken to ignore what was always there. The arrogance, the hunger for validation, the performative charm. Even in the photos, his smile was meant for the camera, not for me. My phone buzzed again. Melissa understands me in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone your own age. Already told my family. They agree we grew apart. Nobody's fault, really. I actually laughed. Not bitterly, not yet, but with something close to disbelief. Then I took screenshots of every message, adding them to the evidence folder on my desktop. He didn't even realize how valuable his cruelty was becoming to me. Each line of mockery, each arrogant boast, all future exhibits. My lawyer was going to have a field day. By evening, Carmen called. "I've reviewed everything you sent," she said, her tone brisk but pleased. "He's dug his own grave. We'll file for emergency injunctions to freeze all shared accounts first thing tomorrow." I swirled the last sip of wine in my glass. "Do it." "Oh, and Elena," Carmen added. "I almost hope he tries to fight it. It'll make the judge's job easier." Just as I was getting ready for bed, my phone lit up one last time. "Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller." I laughed so hard, I startled myself. He really thought he had the authority to let me live in the home that wasn't his. He thought every good thing in my life was something he'd granted, never something I'd earned. That was the sickness of men like him. They confuse proximity with ownership. "I know the shop means a lot to you," the next text read. "We can work out a fair payment for your half." I set the phone down and poured another glass of wine. The good bottle, the one I'd been saving for something special. This counted. The next morning, Brighton Falls woke to drizzle soft and steady, the kind that keeps you inside your thoughts. I drove to the courthouse, dropped off the signed affidavits, and met Carmen for breakfast after. She smiled as she stirred her coffee. "He's going to lose everything he thinks he owns by the end of the month." "I don't want everything," I said. "Just what's mine." She lifted her cup in a small salute. "Then we'll make sure that's all you get, and that he gets none of it." Later that day, his mother called. I recognized the number instantly. "Elena," she began, voice thick with disapproval. "Daniel told us what happened. How controlling you've been. How you've frozen accounts, ruined his travel plans. He says you're trying to destroy him." I set the call on speaker and continued arranging a window display. "Did he also tell you he drained our joint account and used our credit card to buy flights for himself and his mistress?" Silence. "Well," she said finally, "he said you left him no choice, that you were cold, distant." I picked up one of the scarves and tied it neatly around a mannequin's neck. "Barbara, I have his texts. Would you like me to read them? The one where he brags about stealing from me, or the one where he mocks my age?" Another pause. Then, quietly, "He did seem a bit cruel. I told him that text was inappropriate." "I appreciate the call," I said evenly, "but my lawyer advised minimal contact with Daniel's family during proceedings. Goodbye, Barbara." When I ended the call, I caught my reflection in the boutique window. I didn't see a victim. I saw a woman who'd finally learned that grace didn't mean surrender. He wanted me to collapse, to beg, to unravel. Instead, I smiled and started planning my new window display. Because nothing says revenge quite like business as usual. By Friday morning, Daniel's anger had reached a new level of desperation. My phone erupted with a string of messages, half indignation, half panic. "What the hell did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel says the reservation's canceled. Answer me, Elena." Each text came faster, more frantic than the last. I silenced my phone and slid it face down on the counter. The satisfaction wasn't about vengeance, it was about balance. The universe had a way of collecting its debts. I poured myself another coffee, tied my hair into a neat twist, and opened More and Grace right on schedule. Friday was always my busiest day, new shipments, regular clients, and Brighton Falls' elite wandering in for weekend fashion fixes. There was a strange comfort in the rhythm of it, the soft chatter of customers, the sound of paper bags crinkling, the familiar perfume of cashmere and citrus candles. My world had order again, and for the first time in months, it was entirely mine. Around midday, my assistant, Harper, glanced up from the register. "Your phone's been buzzing nonstop, boss. Want me to check it?" "No need," I said, straightening a row of handbags. "It's just a ghost from my past." She smiled knowingly. "The Miami ghost?" I smirked. "The very one." When I finally checked my messages, I found a voicemail from Daniel's mother. "Claire dear," she began, somehow managing to sound both patronizing and frail. "Daniel told us you froze the accounts and caused problems with his travel plans. He's beside himself. Don't you think this has gone far enough?" I pressed delete. She'd already called once. Twice would be indulgence. Minutes later, Carmen's name flashed on my screen. I answered instantly. "The emergency hearing is set for Monday," she said. "Given his text admitting he emptied the joint account, plus the credit card fraud, we're in a strong position to freeze what's left." "Good," I said, smiling. "Has he been served yet?" "Not yet, but he will be soon at the address of his new motel, actually." "Motel?" I repeated. "Oh, yes. His girlfriend's been documenting their adventure on social media. They didn't get far after their Miami plans collapsed. Apparently, they're holed up near the airport, living on vending machine snacks." I let out a laugh, soft, controlled, but genuine. Daniel always said I didn't know how to enjoy small victories. I was finally learning. By evening, the gossip machine had done its job. Brighton Falls was a small town with an appetite for irony, and word had spread that Daniel Moore's romantic getaway had ended in a motel meltdown. I didn't ask for details, but they found me anyway. A regular client leaned in while buying a pair of imported shoes. "He tried to use his personal cards," she whispered. "But they were maxed out. You dodged a grenade, my dear." I just smiled. Some grenades light their own fuse. The following day, Carmen stopped by the boutique, paperwork in hand. "He's doubling down," she said. "He texted that he made copies of your financial records. Claims half the business is his." I took the papers from her, scanning them calmly. "Let him claim. The company was incorporated before our marriage. Separate entity, separate assets. Every invoice, every cent accounted for." Carmen grinned. "You're my favorite kind of client. Prepared?" Unflinchingly. I set the paperwork aside. "Sometimes the best revenge," I said, "is simply being ready." Monday morning came draped in nerves and espresso. Carmen met me outside the courthouse, heels clicking on marble. I wore black, sharp, elegant, intentional, power disguised as poise. Daniel arrived a few minutes later, wearing designer jeans so tight they looked like they were suffocating his pride. His hair was slicked back, his blazer too loud for daylight. Tessa trailed behind him, chewing her lip, clearly wishing she were anywhere else. He smirked when he saw me. "You really came," he said, like this was a game. I simply adjusted my scarf. Of course, I wouldn't miss the finale. The courtroom felt cold and clinical, its fluorescent lights merciless on Daniel's tan. Carmen began her case methodically, each piece of evidence stacking like bricks in a wall he couldn't climb. The text messages, the receipts, the fraudulent credit card charges, his documented history of unexplained withdrawals. Daniel's lawyer, a young man trying too hard to sound confident, stammered through objections. "My client admits to some impulsive actions, but Mrs. Moore's behavior has been vindictive, even calculated." Carmen tilted her head. "You mean prudent? She protected her separate assets and kept precise records." "That's not vindictive, counselor. That's intelligence." A ripple of quiet amusement moved through the courtroom. Even the judge's lips twitched. Daniel tried to protest, but every word he spoke became another nail in his own coffin. "I was just trying to make a clean break," he insisted. The judge's brow arched. "By committing financial fraud?" He swallowed hard. "And now you're claiming rights to assets your wife can prove predate your marriage?" "She used my moral support," Daniel blurted. "That boutique only succeeded because I encouraged her." Carmen's smile was venom wrapped in velvet. "You mean the same boutique you repeatedly called her little shop?" Daniel's yaff locked. The judge's gavel hit wood. "All shared assets will remain frozen pending resolution. Mr. Moore, you are ordered to return any funds taken from joint accounts within 24 hours. "But the money's gone," he snapped. "Then," the judge said dryly, "I suggest you find a way to replace it." When it was over, Daniel stormed out, muttering curses. Tessa trailed behind, mascara streaked, her phone buzzing nonstop. I didn't follow. I walked out slowly, the marble echoing under my heels, sunlight spilling across the courthouse steps. Outside, the air felt clearer than it had in months. For the first time since that cursed text, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not victory, not relief, freedom. And the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was earned. The courthouse doors closed behind me with a final, satisfying thud-like punctuation on a sentence I'd been writing for years. I didn't look back. The autumn air was brisk, salted with the sea breeze from Brighton Falls Harbor. I inhaled deeply, letting it wash through me, cold and clean. The sun was bright, the sky brutally blue, a perfect day for endings. Daniel's voice echoed faintly behind me as he argued with Tessa in the parking lot. She looked on the verge of tears. He looked like a man who'd just realized he wasn't the hero of his own story. I kept walking. Carmen fell into step beside me, her heels clicking in rhythm with mine. "He'll stew for a while," she said. "Men like him always do. Then he'll try something reckless." "Good," I replied. "Let him. I'll be ready." She smiled, impressed. "You know, most clients crumble after court. You look lighter." I adjusted my sunglasses. Because he expected me to break. I'd rather disappoint him one last time. That evening, I returned to my boutique, my sanctuary of polished wood floors and softly glowing lamps. My employees had left early, so I was alone. The quiet wrapped around me like silk. I poured a small glass of wine, not celebration, not relief, just stillness. I replayed the morning in my head. Daniel's sneer cracking into panic. The judge's stern tone, the heavy silence when his lies collapsed in on themselves. For 12 years, I had been careful, polite, accommodating, endlessly patient. I had smiled through every criticism, forgiven every betrayal disguised as a joke. But that woman was gone. I'd buried her the moment I pressed report fraud. The next few days brought a series of small, almost poetic updates. Carmen called to confirm that all shared accounts were frozen. Daniel's lawyer filed for a continuance, already sensing his client was impossible to defend. And then the gossip started. Brighton Falls was a small town, the kind that treated other people's scandals like oxygen. By midweek, everyone knew Daniel Moore had been caught funding his affair with embezzled money and lost his Miami fantasy before it ever began. Customers came into my boutique in waves, some curious, others quietly supportive. One woman, a longtime client named Sophia, leaned in conspiratorially as I boxed her purchase. "My ex-husband tried the same thing," she whispered. "Thought he could outsmart me. Turns out I was the one keeping the books." I smiled. "Funny how competence looks like control to the wrong man." She laughed softly. "You're stronger than I ever was." "No," I said. "Just better prepared." A week later, Carmen stopped by with another update. "His attorney filed a new claim," she said, dropping a folder on my desk. "Apparently Daniel now believes he was your business partner." I raised an eyebrow. "Partner? He couldn't even manage our Netflix subscription. His claim is that he contributed emotional support to the boutique's success." I stared at her. "Moral support?" Carmen chuckled. "Don't worry, the judge won't buy it. Your records are airtight. Separate entity, separate income, separate assets. You're bulletproof." "Good," I said, turning back to the invoices I was reviewing. "Because he's not done. Not yet." By Friday, the next wave of drama rolled in like clockwork. Apparently, Daniel and Tessa had checked out of their motel. Rumor had it they were now staying in her tiny studio apartment on the outskirts of town. His luxury wardrobe had been returned for refunds. His company car had been repossessed. Karma, it seemed, had a flair for choreography. Carmen called again that evening, sounding both exhausted and amused. "He's unraveling," she said. "Tessa's social media posts are gold. She's venting about him being broke, lazy, and blaming everyone else for his mess. Even her? Especially her." I poured another glass of wine, letting the laughter come easy this time. "He's still my favorite client's favorite enemy," Carmen added, her voice warm. "But seriously, Elena, stay alert. When men like him start losing everything, they get dangerous." "I know," I said, staring out the window at the dimming sky. "But he's already lost the one thing he can't buy back." "What's that?" "My indifference." Saturday morning came with another twist. I was in the middle of setting up a new window display when Harper walked in, phone in hand. "You're trending," she said. "Trending?" She turned her phone around, showing me a local gossip blog titled "Karma Wears Couture, Brighton Falls Scandal of the Year." There I was, smiling behind the counter, my boutique glowing in the background. The headline read, "Local businesswoman outsmarts cheating husband, builds fashion empire from his midlife crisis." "I blinkte, half horrified, half delighted." "Who wrote this?" I asked. Harper grinned. "Probably someone who bought one of our handbags." I couldn't help it, I laughed. If he thought he was embarrassing me, he just turned me into a brand. That night, I framed Daniel's original text, the one that started it all, and hung it in my office. "I'm leaving you, Elena. Moving to Miami with Tessa. I've already emptied our joint account. Ha ha." Below it, I placed a small brass plaque. "Watch me," because he thought that message was the end of my story. But it was only the beginning of his education. 6 months after that courtroom showdown, life had reshaped itself quieter, sharper, and far more intentional. Moore and Grace had evolved from a single boutique into 2 thriving locations, both bathed in soft light and ambition. I'd hired new staff, expanded into custom accessories, and quietly launched an online line that was gaining national attention. The irony wasn't lost on me. The little shop Daniel once mocked now made more in a month than his old job ever had. Sometimes I caught myself smiling when I walked past the framed text in my office. Not with bitterness anymore, but with gratitude. He'd handed me freedom wrapped in cruelty. Carmen dropped by one afternoon, dressed as always in her signature red blazer and unshakable calm. "You're on the cover of Modern Entrepreneur," she said, sliding a glossy magazine across my desk. The headline read, "From Betrayal to Brilliance, How Elena Rivera Turned Heartbreak into an Empire." I couldn't help laughing. "They make it sound like a fairy tale." Carmen smirked. "Fairy tales end with castles. Yours ends with balance sheets." We toasted with espresso. "Any new developments?" I asked. She nodded. Daniels filed yet another petition. Claims the divorce settlement was unfair. The judge dismissed it before lunch. Ordered him to pay your legal fees this time. I exhaled slowly. He's still trying to rewrite a story that already ended. Because he can't stand that you wrote it. Later that week, I got an unexpected visitor, Amanda, Daniel's sister. She stood awkwardly in the boutique doorway, clutching her purse like it was a peace offering. Elena, she began, I know I'm probably the last person you want to see. Come in, I said. She hesitated, then stepped inside, eyes darting over the displays. You've done so well here, she said softly. It's beautiful. Thank you. I owe you an apology. Her voice cracked. We believed everything Daniel said, that you were cold, controlling, that he was trapped. But after everything that came out, the fraud, the texts, how he treated you, we realized how wrong we were. I studied her face, saw the shame written there. It wasn't satisfaction, I felt just finality. Thank you, Amanda, I said gently. But you don't owe me anything. Just stop making excuses for him. She nodded, tears glimmering. We already have. He's been unbearable since the divorce, blames everyone for his failures. Our mother finally told him to stop calling. I raised an eyebrow. Barbara told him that? Amanda gave a rueful smile. Turns out she's discovered boundaries too. A few months later, my boutique's second grand opening was the event of the season champagne, camera flashes, and the subtle hum of whispered admiration. I wore a sleek white suit, every detail deliberate. Calm, control, rebirth. Halfway through the evening, as the local press circled for interviews, I spotted someone standing by the window, hesitant, uncomfortable. Tessa, the girl, no, the woman who once thought my husband's attention meant victory. She looked smaller than I remembered. Younger, too, though her eyes were older, the kind of tired that comes from learning the truth the hard way. Elena, she said softly. I wasn't sure if I should come. You're here now, I said, motioning her toward the quieter back corner of the store. She took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. I believed him when he said you were cold and controlling. I thought he was just misunderstood. I waited. But then I watched him do to me exactly what he did to you. The lies, the guilt, the way he makes you feel like you're the problem for noticing his behavior. I nodded slowly. That's not love. That's control wearing charm like a mask. Tessa's eyes welled up. I should have known. You were kind to me at the office party. And I still. You were 20, I said quietly. He was 45. The power was never equal. She blinked fast, then smiled weakly. You sound like my therapist. Good therapist, I said. We stood there for a moment, surrounded by silk and soft light, two women connected not by rivalry, but by survival. He's living with his friend now, Tessa added. Keeps talking about how you ruined him. But really, he ruined himself. I know, I said. And now you know too. She nodded, shoulders lighter. I'm starting my own business, social media consulting. Small for now, but it's mine. That's how it starts, I said, smiling. Small but yours. She hesitated, then handed me a business card. If you ever need a digital campaign manager, I'll call you, I promised. And for the first time, I meant it. After she left, Harper approached me with a grin. Was that the Tessa? Yes, I said. She looked nervous. She should. She met the woman he underestimated. Harper laughed. You ever think of writing a book? Maybe someday, I said, gazing at the boutique floor, the glow of polished marble reflecting a woman who'd rebuilt herself from ashes. Title suggestion? Harper teased. Simple, I said. He left. I thrived. By the time winter rolled around, the boutique chain had expanded into 3 locations, with a 4th on the way. My life wasn't perfect, no one's ever is, but it was peaceful, purposeful, and fully mine. Every so often, I'd get a call from Carmen with another tidbit about Daniel, another failed business venture, another ill-advised fling, another lawsuit dismissed. Each time, I'd just smile and return to work. Because I'd already learned the lesson. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's success. And silence. A year after the divorce, Moore and Grace wasn't just a boutique anymore. It was a name, a brand, a quiet empire. The local paper called it the backbone of Brighton Falls fashion scene. I called it freedom. The first anniversary of my second location coincided with a new expansion announcement, a 3rd store in Savannah, overlooking the waterfront. The invitations were gold embossed, the guest list curated with precision. Investors, clients, media, all the people who once dismissed me as Daniel's wife now lined up to toast Elena Rivera, CEO. As I stood beneath the soft chandeliers that night, I realized something strange. I didn't feel triumphant or proud. I felt peaceful. The kind of peace that comes only when you've stopped waiting for an apology that will never come. Carmen arrived fashionably late, as usual, clutching a small envelope. "From the courthouse," she said, sliding it into my hand. "You'll like this one." I opened it carefully, the edges crisp against my manicured nails. "Order of dismissal petition denied. Plaintiff to pay defendant's court fees." I smiled. "He tried again." "He always does," Carmen replied, sipping her champagne. "But the judge is tired of his games. He's a cautionary tale in a suit now." "I'm done caring," I said, tucking the document away. "He's background noise." But Brighton Falls never lets go of its stories easily. A few weeks later, Amanda stopped by the boutique again, this time with her mother in tow. Barbara looked older, softer, almost apologetic. "Elena," she said gently, "we came to thank you." "For what?" "For showing us who he really was. For not hiding the truth. I wish I'd believed you sooner." I smiled politely, but inside, I felt something unexpected forgiveness, quiet and clean. "He's still angry," Barbara admitted. "Still blaming everyone. Says you destroyed him." "I didn't destroy him," I said softly. "I just stopped protecting him from himself." Barbara nodded slowly. "That's what I finally told him." The months slipped by like silk through fingers, one success rolling into the next. A feature in Vogue Business, a partnership with a luxury designer from Paris, a waiting list for custom orders that stretched into next season. Every headline about me seemed to rewrite the past, from betrayal to business icon. Elena Rivera, the woman who turned a scandal into strength. The irony? I hadn't done any of it for recognition. I just refused to disappear. One afternoon, as I reviewed sketches for the Savannah store's launch, Harper popped her head into my office. "There's someone asking for you," she said carefully. "Says his name is Daniel." I froze, not out of fear but out of a kind of distant curiosity. "Tell him I'm busy." He said he'll wait. Then he'll wait a long time. Through the tinted glass, I saw him standing by the entrance, hands shoved in his pockets, his posture crumpled. The sharpness was gone, his hair was grayer, his suit ill-fitting. The confidence that once filled every room he entered had drained out completely. I stayed behind the glass, watching. After a few minutes, Harper approached him. He said something. She nodded politely, and he left. She returned to my office, a little wide-eyed. "He wanted to talk," she said. "Said he regrets everything." "I'm sure he does. He asked if you'd at least hear him out." I smiled faintly. "I already did years ago. He just wasn't listening." That night, as I closed the boutique, I lingered at the door, looking out at the quiet street. The same street where I'd once stood, numb, reading his cruel text. Now, I stood taller, unshaken, unbothered, untouched. In the reflection of the glass, I saw myself, older, wiser, radiant in a way no youth could imitate. Not polished by perfection, but by survival. 2 years after Daniel's text, Moore and Grace had 5 locations, a national following, and a story that women whispered about with pride. At a business conference in Atlanta, I was asked to speak on stage. The topic, Building Boundaries, Building Empires. Halfway through the Q&A, a young woman raised her hand. "My husband says keeping finances separate is paranoid," she said nervously. "That if I trust him, I should share everything. What do you think?" I smiled. "Trust is beautiful," I said. "But protection isn't paranoia. It's wisdom. Build your dreams, not your dependencies." The room erupted in applause. Later that evening, I returned to my hotel suite. On my desk sat a single white envelope, delivered by concierge. No return address. Inside was a check, $3,000, signed in Daniel's handwriting, and a short note scrawled in blue ink. "For everything I took, I'm sorry." For a moment, I just stared at it. Then I folded the check once, twice, 3 times, until it was small enough to fit in my palm and dropped it gently into the wastebasket. Because forgiveness wasn't about taking back what was owed. It was about finally understanding I didn't need it. Back at home, I poured a glass of wine and stood in my office, gazing at that framed text message, the cruel spark that had started it all. "I'm leaving you. I've emptied our joint account. Ha ha." Beneath it, my brass plaque gleamed in the lamplight. "Watch me." And I did. I watched myself rebuild a life so radiant, so unstoppable, that not even betrayal could dim it. I turned off the lights, smiled at my reflection in the glass door, and whispered, Thank you for leaving. Because he didn't break me. He built me. He just didn't mean to.